I'm still waiting for my co-host to join, so.
I'm not the only one on here, am I?
For now, but that's okay.
Okay, I think I'm set at this end. Do I need anything?
No, ma'am. No. Participants while we're talking will be muted. So, if there's any extraneous stuff, it'll won't come through. Good evening, Stratton.
Good evening. Hello. Do we have our first guest?
We
already?
do. Vivian's joined us.
Hi, Vivian. Thank you.
Lee
for being
hasn't.
here.
Yeah, Lee hasn't joined us yet.
Okay.
Even my husband's coming.
Yeah. I have a friend from Atlanta who might be showing up too.
Oh, good. We'll see how far everybody comes from.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm South Florida.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic. How'd you hear about it?
Amanda Beach Cook is my daughter,
Oh, good.
and she keeps me tuned into everything you guys do. And if I can
Fantastic.
participate, then I try.
Yeah.
You have a
Awesome.
fabulous library. We
We
visited
really
it
do.
many times.
We really do have a good library. I was surprised today. I do these little readers advisory videos, and a cousin out in California called me and was like, I just love your little videos. And I'm like, I hadn't even thought about that. My family can view these. Ugh. But it's fun.
Who runs your book club, and how can I find out about that?
I do actually. Well, there are so many book clubs. I do 2 Thursday during the day book groups. There are the first Thursday and the second Thursday. There's 2 different nonfiction ones. There's a true crime one, and then Amy over in Circulation also does a weekend book group. So what is that? That's 3, 6. There's 7 different book groups. Yeah. Hi, Lee.
Hey,
Hey, Shannon.
Yes.
For the trivia answers, where am I going to be seeing that? Like where are they? How are they?
They're going to be
I'm
the
looking
first
at
one.
chat.
The first one to answer it over in chat. And if you'll bring chat open, you'll be able to track that.
Yeah. So it'll be in the public chat then. And I'm just looking
Yes.
for the first person per
To
question.
correctly answer it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I need to get something to write this down.
Unless you have a fantastic memory.
would you like?
You can go ahead and put up the slides if you want, Lee.
Sure.
The first
You want
slide.
me to, yeah. Do you want me to leave the room open? You don't want a waiting room?
No.
Okay. Alrighty. Yeah.
can do it on the computer. I forgot. Okay.
Hi, Linda.
So Shannon, who's here. Hey, Shannon.
Yes. Good to see you, Linda. I love watching your walks in the evening. And Stratton,
Yes.
with the screen the way it is, you may have to pull chat up as a separate floating box so you can track it. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
It helps me anyway.
Shannon, can you hear me?
Yes. Ah,
Shannon.
there you go. I got wrapped up in my extension cord.
Can anybody hear me? Okay, good. Do what?
We still got about 3 minutes, and I will allow a little bit of time, like 2 minutes after that, so that others can join in. We'll try and stay within time frame though, because if anybody, if there's a lot of talking to do, you know, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about with Agatha. We'll try.
Okay, I seem to be lagging a little bit. Are you hearing me okay, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Wow. Hello, Laura. Long time no see.
Hey, Shannon.
Great to see you. Where are you calling in from?
I moved to UA, so I'm in Northport now.
Fantastic. I'm enjoying watching Laura's cat interrupt. You think Agatha will do that, Stratton?
Do I know?
You think Agatha will participate?
Definitely. Agatha will and Murdoch will.
All right, as I mentioned, we will be muting participants as they arrive so that we could get down to talking between Stratton and I. There is a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure. Anyway, well, I'll go ahead and get started. just with the introductions, which is not part of the quiz at the end. My name is Shannon Haddock, and I have worked in the fiction department at Hoover for 12 years. Well, over 12 years now. And I've been working as a librarian since the late 80s at various sundry places around Birmingham. And I would like to introduce my co-host, Stratton Dolatabadi, and he has worked in the circulation department the whole time, 8 years, right?
Yep.
Yep. And he is a Agatha enthusiast. His cat is named Agatha, and she may make an appearance. And also, he's a student, oh, God bless his heart, at Troy University. So we will be talking about one of our favorite authors, and hopefully one of your favorite authors, Agatha Christie. May I ask, who is Lead? I cannot mute you, but you're coming through. Let's see. Okay, anyway, there we go. Better. So anyway, I have loved Agatha for a long time, but most of my the love that I have is for her on TV and movies. I have to be honest. I fell in love with Miss Marple on PBS, and before I even really realized they were novels. And I have been reading a lot of Agatha Christie lately, and when I decided to do this program, I realized how many there were. So anyway, just as a starting point, I'm going to give you the reason that I love Agatha, and we'll go talk about that. For me, they are a balm during this tumultuous time. They're not predictable, but the plots are ingenious and the characters draw you in. They're very quirky people. But I know that by the end, I'm going to have a resolution to a mystery, and it's comforting. A lot of books today, published today, you don't know. There's going to be some off foot action going on that you don't know is going to resolve at the end of the book. Everything with Agatha is right there on the page. So that's why I love Agatha. What about you, Stratton?
So you express yourself much more eloquently than I'm going to, but for me, I mean, I love a mystery. I love scary things. I love horror. I love true crime. But for me, Agatha, she has a unique ability that not all writers and not all directors or anything else or movies have or books, that she makes me to keep reading. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what the setting is. It doesn't matter how much or how little action is happening. I constantly just want more, and that's a testament to her writing ability. And I have to share the story, Shannon, that what happened last night. So I was thinking about this program and why I love Agatha, but what I initially wrote down was that she leaves me always wanting more. And so I sat down with Shannon last night, and she mentioned, and this is going to be a shameless plug for our streaming service Canopy for Hoover residents and Birmingham residents. But there is a documentary series, and it's called, what is it? Icons of
America, I think.
Okay. And there is an episode on Agatha Christie where these scientists get together and they analyze her writings. They literally throw her every word she wrote down and published, and it analyzes, this computer system that they're using analyzes these words. And as it turns out, she had a system of writing in which, and you're going to explain it much better than I can, but basically she knew how to write and kind of emphasize specific words, and she would use them over and over again.
My scientist husband explained it
And
to me.
the purpose of doing that was to make the reader. Say that one. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I said, my scientist husband explained it to me.
Oh, is that right? Well, there you go. So if I'm doing a terrible job, please please jump in. But it's just of course that's what she did, because it was amazing, and it explains why I can't stop reading, even if it's
So that documentary
not much action.
he mentioned,
I love her that.
the upshot of that was that she almost hypnotizes the reader with her language, driving you to an ending, and you are left in a really comfortable place reading, and you want to read more. So she's like a drug. And Stratton, what did you find about inspirations for Agatha?
So there was a lot. When I looked at this question, I got excited because I wanted to know who, as writers, inspired her. And there actually wasn't, there weren't many writers there. It was a lot of her influences growing up and her background, which of course it shows how much of a trailblazer she was. She, let me get my notes here 1 second. She's a quote that's there's nothing like boredom to help you write. And I think that proved to be very true with her childhood. Her mother did not want her to learn to read until she was 8 years old. And it was just something, it was a whim. She just decided that it was not good for little Agatha to read. But Agatha taught herself. She was writing poetry by the time she was as early as 4. And so there was a lot of stuff in her head. She imagined everything, and she had imaginary friends. And a lot of those characters kind of stayed in her head. As she grew as a writer,
Oh, you're gone there. Well, anyway, I can now. Yay.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I will say also, like you said, her imaginary characters drove her a lot. And she did at one point say that she loved P.G. Wodehouse and a French writer. Gosh, I can't even remember.
Yes, Gaston Leroux.
Yes, who I'm not familiar with, but
Didn't he write Phantom of the Opera?
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So
and then there was Sherlock Holmes as well.
Right. And Gaston Leroux. And early on in her career, she became a part of what's called the Detection Club, which is interesting. She'd already published a couple of books, and Anthony Berkeley was a writer, a mystery writer of her time, and he invited her and Dorothy Sayers to form this detection club, and it was they called it social networking of the time, and so at that time people were getting together in, I guess, like salons and talking about the craft, and a lot of the influence on those writers was the fact that they had just gotten out of World War I. All of them had been affected. I think Christie's brother was injured in the war. Dorothea Sayers' husband was gassed, and his health never came back. And Anthony, he was injured in the war also. So their form of writing was to leave the violence and the graphic stuff off stage, you know. They wanted it to be a part of the story, but the sex and violence was going to be, you know, not there in the book, because they just had enough. You know, with World War I came the advent of photography, so people knew what war was about finally. And if you didn't go to war, you knew what it was about. So this was the birth of the cozy mystery. And she became a member in 1930 until 1957. She did serve as the president of it, but she told them she would only be president if she never had to give a speech. And it's still in existence today. So that was an interesting start to her networking and learning more about her craft. So, Stratton, were you surprised by that story? We both read some things like this. The Detection Club reminds me of a group that is in Birmingham. It's called Sisters in Crime. Actually, it's a national group, but there's a chapter in Birmingham called Sisters in Crime, and it's female crime writers, and they have a convention and sit around and workshop ideas, and it's very, I imagine it's very similar to what would have happened back then, you know.
That is very cool.
Yeah. So also there's some interesting things. You know what? I'm going to jump to a little bit about her personal life. I think Stratton makes more sense to me.
Okay.
As Stratton, I think, mentioned, as a child in Devon, she was born in Torquay, Devon in 1890s-ish. I'm not going to give you the exact date because it's in the trivia. But anyway, she was the youngest child. She had an older brother and sister, both off at boarding school. And for whatever reason, like Stratton said, the mother decided, you know, Agatha needed to be homeschooled. She taught herself to read and write. And by the age of 16, she was reading The Three Musketeers in French. So very, very agile mind, self-motivated. And so early life was fairly settled. And then her father died, and their finances were okay. She was upper middle class before, and they were still upper middle class after her father's death, but it was more of a struggle. The realities of money were a daily thing in their lives. So they were always thinking about ways to be creative to make money. And I'm just checking, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Do you hear feedback, Stratton? Are we good? Anyway, okay, so also they chose for her to have her debutante year in Cairo because it was cheaper than in London, for whatever reason. So she had her debutante year in Cairo. She did go to Paris to study music and art a little bit in her teenage years. And then she settled in, and right in, oh gosh, what is the date she met Archie? Her first husband was a colonel, Archie Christie, and they married after a short engagement. And then they had one child named Rosalind. I think the feedback is me. Oh, anyway, one child named Rosalind, and then disaster strikes, and Archie falls in love with, I think, might have been a friend of Agatha's, and announces he wants a divorce. Well, at that same time in 1926, her mother, her very, very close relationship with her mother passed away. And then Archie announces he wants a divorce and he wants to marry this other woman. She just loses it. She goes missing for 11 days. And at this point, she was very famous in all of Europe. So at one point, there were 2,000 citizens on the ground looking for Agatha Christie. The police eventually found her signed into a bed and breakfast, and she claims to have had no memory of how she got there or what happened in the days of her disappearance. But she was signed in under the name of her husband's mistress. So, you know, it never really got resolved. There's all kind of speculation as to how this happened, but it's very interesting. There's a interesting take on it. I watched a movie called, what was it, Agatha and the Mystery of Murder. And Agatha is a main character in the movie. It's kind of a retelling of, oh, this might have happened while she disappeared. It's very good. Anyway, so that's happened to her, and she had a very, very hard time of it. But she kept writing. She produced some of her most popular books during this rough time in her life. And she had traveled the world with Archie, and she was traveling the world again and was on an archaeological dig and met her second husband. And they married in 1930. And they were a very good match intellectually, so it worked out really well. And so that's a basic outline of what was going on with Agatha. And so Stratton, can you tell us a little bit about the publication of her first book?
I want to go back for just a second. And if you already mentioned this, please forgive me, just speak up. Like you said, with her disappearance there, it's all speculation. She personally never really said anything. But if you read, and this, I know this is one of the trivia questions, so I won't say the name, but she wrote, she wrote a few books under a pseudonym, and emotionally, a lot of what she went through, it seems she put down in these writings. So if you ever want to know, once you know what the pseudonym is, if you ever want to kind of get inside her psyche during that time, those are the books to read. But yes, so The Mysterious Affair at Styles, she started writing in 1916. It was published 100 years ago, 1920. It did very well. Let me get my notes. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so it did well. It got, it did well with the reviews. It did well with just the general audience. She made money off of this book, and it really launched her career as a writer. She was able to keep going because of the success of The Mysterious Affair at Styles. There in 1990, I want to say there was this analysis done on her writing in this book specifically, and it was determined by this group who put together this analysis that it still stood the test of time, that it was still relevant. One thing specifically that they noted was how this was one of her works in which there was a real sense of place and time. When you read when you read this, you know exactly what the setting is. You know what is going on in the outside world as far as the war. And so, yeah, it stood the test of time. Then in, I want to say in 2016, there was an article in, I think, Entertainment Weekly, which listed some of her books and kind of did a best of, and it was ranked in with the top 10.
Yeah.
So it's relevant. And going back to why it's relevant, for me personally, I think, like they said in that analysis in 1990, that there was a strong sense of place. And so for me personally, I'm very nostalgic. And so I love going back in time when I'm reading someone's works. It I don't know, it's just, I don't know, it makes me nostalgic for a
Yeah.
time that I personally never knew, I guess. And it's fun to kind of, in your mind, play dress up and attend those parties and be of that particular time and place.
And you forgot to mention, she never would have been a writer like this had she not had a conversation with her older sister, Madge. They were talking about, I think, Arthur Conan Doyle, and they were chastising each other on they wrote all the time, right? And Madge challenged Agatha to write a detective novel, a mystery. And, she bet her that she couldn't do it. So this was the results. She got 6 rejections with the Styles book. And it finally got published by a small house. And eventually she and Archie bought a palatial mansion. I know, probably not that big, but they named it Styles. I didn't realize that until I read that. But so, all for sibling rivalry. And my favorite, I'm going to talk about my favorite, is the best, I think, of her works, and then there were none. It's probably her most famous work. Everybody knows about it. There was a teeny bit of controversy because at the time it was published, the name was different and it was controversial later. So anyway, I won't get into that, but there was a lot of new things that she brought about in, and then there were none. These people who are all guilty of crimes are invited to an isolated island. And this whole concept of the locked room mystery really shines through in this particular novel. The characters are just, you want, magnetic characters. And some of them are really sleazy. Some of them seem innocent, but, they're all brought there to kind of reckon with the crimes they're supposedly accused of. That's my favorite Agatha novel. What about you, Stratton?
So I have to confess that my favorite is also And Then There Were None. That was the first Agatha Christie book I ever read, and I think it's brilliant. But for the sake of diversity, I will mention my number 2, which is Endless Night. It's one of her later books, and I want to say she wrote it in 1967, or it might have been published in 67. And I like it because it's another standalone. It's not a Poirot. It's not a Marple. And it's different. It feels like maybe you're not reading an Agatha Christie, which I like. And it's one of those, like I mentioned before, it's one of those, there's not a lot happening in a lot of the book, but you sense that something is off. At the very beginning, all you know is there's this young man who has fallen in love and he wants to build this house on a property that is cursed by gypsies.
Oh,
That's how it starts. I will not tell you, of course, how it ends, but it's what I like to call a slow burn. It just kind of it slowly builds and builds and builds, and then you get to the conclusion, and you're kind of knocked off your feet a little bit. So, yeah, that is my number
interesting.
2.
I'll share some of the secrets of Agatha's works as a whole. I didn't realize this till I read it, but they all have a shared universe. They all pretty much take place around the same, few decades. And actually, Miss Marple and her Poirot appear in the same book sometimes. So she's got this universe mapped out in her head, and the books kind of align in the same universe. She came to, as you may know, hate Poirot, her main character, a beloved Belgian twerp. she came to hate him. She said he's a ridiculous man, save for his ability to solve crime, and it was unique for her to create this main character who was like so had so many negative characteristics. He was annoying. He butted in on people's conversations, and he was always talking about, how he was he wasn't outwardly saying, but he was saying he was smarter than everybody else, and also she referenced herself sometimes in novels. I can't remember which novel that was, but also her writing from beginning to about when she was 70 years old was very consistently good. You could count on it being a bestseller, quality wise. Then she started having what we now think is dementia, and her writing fell off in the complexity of the language, and maybe the plots were a little bit hit and miss. But one thing that is now looked at as her seeing herself in decline is the book Elephants Can Remember. She writes about a character named Ariadne, and this is an author who forgets and loses all the tracks of her plot. And so they say that this is a bit like she's autobiographical. She's writing about herself, kind of losing it. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And she often didn't know who the killer was going to be, which is interesting. She would start out with all these characters interlinking, and she wouldn't know until she started writing who the killer was going to be. That's kind of unique for me, I think. But anyway, Stratton, if you could tell us a little about these characters she created.
So we're talking about Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. So he described him excellently, just like Agatha would. And Miss Marple, I love her because she reminds me of my grandmother. Every time I read a Miss Marple book, that's who I imagine. She is this sweet old lady who is at the same time very nosy and is going to get into trouble, and she's going to, if you tell her not to cross the crime tape, she's going to do it anyway. But that's why I love her. She's one of those people it's like a little old lady that you can't say no to, and she's going to do what she wants to do, and that's just how it is. And I love that so much. I wanted to open it up at this point, if we can do that, and see, let's see, we have a few people here with us, just to see what their favorite of the recurring characters are.
Anybody want to jump in?
Raise your hand or,
I will.
Go ahead, Vivian.
My favorite book was, of course, The Orient Express. And I loved her writing because she made me feel like I was part of the story, like I was right there. It wasn't like I was looking in, it was like it was all around me. And I like Poirot because he was so unique and quirky. And I think that's what, his quirky character is what attract people, to him.
Yeah. And I have a fondness for Tommy and Tuppence.
Oh, yeah.
I liked their relationship. They started out, well, she's like this really smart woman with all kind of ideas of how to make money. And Tommy is less successful in making that happen. So they kind of start out in some kind of blackmail scheme, and it turns into them becoming amateur detectives. And there's a lot of, almost Laurel and Hardy bumbling through these, the first parts of the story of them solving crimes and things. I like their relationship. And I'm especially influenced by the series Partners in Crime that's done, and it's the Tommy and Tuppence stories. It's on, I think, Acorn Media. Anybody else want to talk about their favorites? If not, I will go ahead because I removed this question from the trivia. Her stint as a romance writer, she wrote during her turbulent years of losing Archie and finding her second husband. She wrote as a romance novelist. She wrote 6 novels, and the only book that we have in the system is the first one, Giant's Bread, was written by Mary Westmacott, and that is her pseudonym. And funny enough, this was kept a secret for 20 years. No one knew it was Agatha Christie that wrote them. And she was mildly successful as a romance writer, so that was kind of interesting. Her daughter did write later that this was some of her favorite writing because she felt like it showed a softer side to her mother, writing these romance novels. So that was kind of interesting. And let's see, I'm trying to find out what else we haven't talked about. If you didn't already know, she wrote like almost 80 plays. And her most successful was, of course, The Mousetrap. And it played in the West End of London it started out as a present to Queen Mary, wife of King George V. And her 80th birthday was in 1947. And she asked Agatha to write a radio drama. And some of the members of the Detection Club had been doing radio dramas. So she agreed to write one for the Queen. And this became not Broadway, but for London, it's Broadway. It became a success. She was quoted as saying she'd give it 8 months on the stage. So, interestingly enough, it has been played every night since 1952, and it only ceased in March 2020 because of the pandemic. 68 years running. And there are a little bit of caveat written by Agatha. First of all, she gave the rights to the play to her grandson, Matthew. And in some of her writing, she said, this cannot be made into a book until it's been off book or movie, until it's been off of the West End play stage for 6 months. So I bet you somebody's taking note of that, March 2020, and 6 months later, I bet you there'll be something published. So anyway, the Mousetrap is famous, and it's been, I mean, the list of actors and actresses, just are astounding. Who's been in this play? Everybody. But anyway, just amazing. And oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say. Anyway, she was very pleased with the success of Mousetrap. As anyone else? Oh, I know another one. Oh gosh, I can't remember. She wrote the screenplay for Charles Dickens' A Bleak House. And just all kinds of interesting things about her. So anyway, something that might be interesting to hear from the participants is about the screen adaptations of some of Agatha's work. I've been watching tons of series and movies based on her work. Has anybody got a favorite? Tell us about that.
I'll start off.
Yeah.
The mirror cracked. Based on the mirror cracked from side to side. This one stars Angela Lansbury as Miss Marple. It's all-star cast: Elizabeth Taylor, Tony Curtis, Rock Hudson, Kim Novak, and other names are escaping me at the moment, but I love that one so much, and I highly recommend it. It came out in 1980, I want to say.
Yeah, there's tons of, I think they redid that recently, the mirror crack, for another, I'm trying to find in my notes. They did a mirror crack. Yes. Oh, is that the one with Angela Lansbury?
Yes.
Yeah. And I also, when we get through with trivia, I've got 2 prizes. One is the new production of Death on the Nile with David Suchet. And I've got a copy of Agatha Christie's first novel, The Mysterious Ferret Styles. We're going to ease into the trivia. And to do that, if you have an answer to a question, there's only like 8 of you, so we'll have to get on with these questions. And we've got a few questions, and the winners get prizes. You'll have to come by the library and pick it up. Or we could arrange pickup at curbside. So if you want to give us the first question, Lee. Okay. Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple are Agatha Christie's most famous detectives, but she also created a host of other mystery solvers. Which of the following is not a Christie detective? Tuppence Beresford, Roger Ackroyd, Harley Quinn, or Parker Pyne? And if you will put your answer into chat, we will be able to track who's right and who's wrong. If you could just type in your answer.
Yeah, it's the first person to answer correctly, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've got one. Oh, Laura. Laura gets that point. Next slide. Roger Ackroyd. He's actually a victim in the case of the murder of Roger Ackroyd. And he's wanting to marry this woman, and the woman kills herself because she's been accused of killing her husband, which she did. So anyway, that was published in 1926. All right, you guys, let's get some more people participating. Let's see. Next slide. Oops. Well, what date was Christie born? Pick the one that you think is correct. Got, oh, goody. All right. Well, Vivian, can you be more specific? There's two with that year. Oh, very good. The correct answer is September 15th, 1890. And if you'll go to the next slide. Dame Agatha Mary Clarissa née Miller Christie. She was born in Torquay, which is in the southwest portion. And she enjoyed fantasy play and creating characters. And she moved to Paris. We talked a little bit about that. Next question. All right, Agatha Christie's job during the First World War gave her knowledge that would later feed into her murder mysteries. What was the job and what knowledge did she learn? And I've got several different good choices. Ooh,
Very good.
Laura, you are hot tonight. She was a nurse. And go to the next slide. Her service card listed 3,400 hours of volunteering in her hometown. She was at first a trainee nurse in a temporary hospital, and then she got her license to dispense medicines, which gave her great knowledge of poisons. And those play heavily into her, here we go, make that a little bit bigger. That plays heavily into her mysteries. Next question. Christie's play, The Mousetrap, is the longest running in history, running 68 years. What is the play about? And do we have an answer? Funny, Randy. A mousetrap. Of sorts.
It's a solid mousetrap.
Oh, Laura is hot tonight. Kurt, go to the next slide. The Mousetrap takes place in a newly established B&B outside of London during a blizzard. So the murderer is still loose, and the guests arrive. I don't know how that's possible. Everyone fits the murderer's descriptions and has a secret.
Hey, real quick before we go on, this is my Agatha.
Hello, Agatha.
She hates being held, but this is Agatha Christie Dolattabody.
Dolattabody. I love it.
Yep.
I love it. Okay, next question. How many novels did Mrs. Marple appear in? Sorry, the whole question's not showing up. 16, 8, 12, 22? Anybody? Amy Deering guesses 16, and that is not correct. Sorry, Amy. And I better not find out y'all are Googling all these answers. Give us another guess. Laura, 22? This is your first wrong one, girl. Anybody else? All right, well, I will answer. Next slide. 12. She was in over 20 short stories, but she was only in 12 novels. And Christie described Miss Marple as an elderly spinster, and she lived in St. Mary Mead. Her real name was Jane Marple, but nobody called her that. And also, strangely enough, Agatha Christie did not like, which was it, Rutherford that played, or which one does she not like? I can't remember, but she did not like the first actress to play Miss Marple, interestingly enough. Okay, next slide. Lee, next slide. What activity did Agatha learn on worldwide tours with her husband? These are all great answers, but only one is correct.
Is Vivian raising her hand?
I think so. Go ahead, Vivian.
None of my answers are going anywhere.
No,
Yeah,
you're kidding.
yeah. I mean, how do I get them to go somewhere? Because they're not going anywhere.
I'm
You're
not
typing
seeing
in
them.
chat. Yeah.
I'm in
Have you-
chat.
And you're typing in?
I'm typing in. In fact, it's surf.
Well, I am so sorry. I don't see them in chat. Let's see.
How do
if
I get them to go? Because I'm typing. What do I have to do besides type it?
I don't
I see one
know.
from you. I see where you entered the 1890 for when she was born.
Well, see,
Yeah.
surf is up there right now.
Huh. Well, I've got your chat on, so I'm not sure. Can you, the honor system, have you gotten in all of them correct?
Oh, of course, not all of them.
How many do you have, Sar, that were right?
What about an answer to this question? What do y'all think?
Surf.
Oh, very good, Vivian. Give Vivian a point. Go to the next slide, and you will see that she was a surfer. Now, her expeditions with her husband, she also became a really good photographer and amateur videographer because later in life that helped in the digs. But she learned to surf. Riding the waves was a privilege of only a few. And she said nothing like that, rushing through the water at about what seems to be 200 miles an hour. Interesting. And look at that surfboard. It's like huge and heavy. Now, next slide. What was Agatha Christie's least favorite novel? Anyone know?
I think I had this one myself.
No? All right. Amy, that is incorrect. In fact, I think
Amy.
Crooked House was one of her favorites. It was. Harold at End House? No. Actually, it was, if you go to the next slide, The Mystery of the Blue Train. She said that it was so poor, it never should have been published.
Wow.
Go figure. And the next question. Which fact is correct in Agatha's personal life and publishing history? Her books have been made into Japanese anime series. She taught herself French at age 16. One of her books is set in 2000 BC Egypt. And she did not like Margaret Rutherford's portrayal of Miss Marple. Anyone got an answer? Getting any answers over there, Stratton?
Laura has guessed the French.
Let's go to the next slide. Trick question. All of them are correct. In addition, she was named a dame by the Queen in 1971. She wrote the screenplay for Charles Dickens' Bleak House. She refused any likeness of Poirot on any of her books, leaving it to the imagination of the reader. And finally, she wrote Passenger to Frankfurt, her 80th book, on her 80th birthday in 1970. A marvelous woman. And she did pass away in 1976 at the age of 86. And if you go to the next slide. All right. Match the characters to the correct novel. Now, this is a little bit harder. And, you know, the slides, you should match up, you know, Poirot, Tuppence, and Miss Marple to the correct novels. Can anybody do that? Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the next slide and see what the answers are. Poirot appeared in Appointment with Death. Did anybody get that one right? Yeah. No.
Yes. Yeah.
And then Tommy and Tuppence in or M in 1941. And Miss Marple was in They Do It with Mirrors. So Laura got all of those correct. Fantastic. Yeah. Next slide. Oh, goodness. I don't know if you're looking at it like I am, but it's all on top of each other. I apologize for that. Which Agatha Christie novel has sold more copies than any other crime novel in history? And the three choices are Murder on the Orient Express, And Then There Were None, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Vivian got it right. And Then There Were None. Correct slide. Next slide. Exactly. The world's best-selling mystery with over 100 million copies sold. And it, of course, it tells the story of 10 guests at an isolated isle. Next slide. Lee. And you may remember me, I already gave you this one away. What is the name of Agatha's second husband, the archaeologist? Laura got it. Next slide. On Agatha's second visit to the ancient Sumerian archaeological site in Ur, I guess that's how you pronounce it, Agatha first met Max Malawan. Malawan? Anyway, 13 years her junior, the two got to know each other and fell in love. 6 months later, they're married. Interesting. Next slide.
Sorry.
All right. This one, how did Christie describe Poirot when explaining why he wouldn't have liked Miss Marple? Which one's correct? He was described as a fussy Belgian twerp, embodiment of all my desires, a silly little man, or as a complete egoist? I would have guessed both of those, fussy Belgian twerp and silly little man. But the answer is, next slide, a complete egoist. Agatha Christie said of Poirot, her brilliant, diminutive, impeccably dressed Belgian detective. And anyway, they found a cache of audio tapes, and she describes these. He found them in his grandmother's attic or basement. Interesting. Next slide. Oh goodness, I don't know. You can't read this one. How many cups of tea did Miss Marple drink over 12 novels and 20 short stories in which she appeared? And how many murders did she solve? Well, I will go ahead and give you the answer. Next slide. Miss Marple drank 143 cups of Devonshire Darjeeling tea while solving 47 murder mysteries. And you got to wonder what's going on in these English villages where there's 47 mysteries for a homebody to solve.
Right.
Next slide. All right, this one, actually, you can say it. That's the secret of existence. We're all a little mad. Which of her characters said that? Let's see if anybody has the answer to this one. Come on.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, we've got 2 guesses. Everybody but Harley Quinn, I guess. If you'll go to the next slide. It was Miss Marple. So point goes to Laura. She said it in They Do It With Mirrors. Next slide. I think it's the last one. What is the title of Poirot's final novel that he appears in?
So sad.
Oh, Laura, you came up with it quick. Curtain. Next slide. It was Curtain, correct. It was written in 1945 when she was at the height of her skills and placed in a safe so that it would be released closer to the author's death. And it was released in 1975. So that's interesting. It was never again, not messed with. It just went out for publication in 1975. Interesting. Next slide. That's it, but I've got one more slide for you. And that is, we've got a lot of different, if you're interested in Agatha, you're going to want to watch a lot of her stuff, read a lot of her books. And as you can see, some of the resources we have at the library are fantastic. Hoopla Digital is an app that you can free app that you can download, and practically every single novel appears as an ebook or audiobook on Hoopla Digital, along with the Miss Marple series, the Poirot series, several documentaries, and then there's also stuff on Canopy and Overdrive. Lastly, I've listed some of the authors. We really didn't get into this very much, the modern influences, and we didn't talk about Sophie Hannah taking over the writing of Poirot's mysteries. Little pressed for time there, but I would definitely recommend reading Sophie Hannah's. She was given permission by the estate to kind of pick up the Poirot novels. It's incredible. They sound just like Agatha's novels, and they're great. Another one that I enjoyed, and then I'll ask Stratton that same question. My favorite was Rachel Housel Hall wrote one called They All Fall Down. And she is an author of color, and she has a lot of diverse, it's based on And Then There Were None. It's an homage. These people are invited to a Mexican island, and the main character thinks she's on a one of those like Survivor episodes, go to a fancy island and win money. So she kind of has a modern take on it. I really love it. Stratton, can you shout out any that you love?
Mm-hmm. So there's one in particular, and it's kind of random. It's called Swing. It came out in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
and it's written by Rupert Holmes, who, if that name is familiar at all, he was the one that wrote and sang the Pina Colada song. So, yeah. So it was written in 2005. It is set during World War II. It's about a jazz musician who kind of stumbles upon this espionage stuff. Anyway, and that's said horribly, but it is such a good book, and it's definitely, you read it and you can tell where the influences are. Highly recommend it. I want to say we have a copy at the library. One thing that's special about this one, though, is that it actually was released with its own soundtrack. So it's there's a lot of
Ooh.
jazz compositions from the 1940s that you can listen to as you're reading.
Fantastic. Well, we thank you both for tuning in on a Wednesday night. And if you have any questions, please, you can contact us many safe ways via telephone or email. And if you want to do curbside pickup, I'd be glad to put aside some mysteries for you. Laura, you are joking me. You've got to send me your address so that I can mail these prizes to you. And Vivian, if you'll put your address or somehow get me your address, I will send you a prize also.
I'll send Amanda to pick it up.
There you go. And you guys take care of yourselves, stay safe, and keep watching our virtual calendar for more virtual events.
Thank
Everybody
you so
have-
much.
Thank you. Everybody have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
It was fun.